And we are live. Welcome to the ComfyCon panel of how to run an anthology without screwing it up. I am McDonald. I have run the anthology Cautionary Fables and Fairy Tales, and I'm currently running a Kickstarter, as you can see on my screen.
Woohoo!
Spikers.
Okay. I am C-Spike Trotman. I have run multiple anthologies. Probably the most notable one is the Smut Peddler series of anthologies, or rather the Resurrected Smut Peddler anthologies, which I ran in 2012 and 2014. I've also run the anthology Sleep of Reason, which was a horror anthology. And I am currently organizing multiple anthologies, which include New World, which is a sci-fi fantasy anthology with a theme that consists of uncontacted cultures meeting for the first time, and Smut Peddler Presents My Monster Boyfriend, both of which should be coming out in 2015. I also have a Kickstarter running. It's for Poorcraft Wish You Were Here, which is a sequel to my very first Kickstarter project, Poorcraft. Poorcraft Original Flavor taught you how to live frugally. Poorcraft Wish You Were Here teaches you how to travel frugally. It's written by Ryan Estrada, who has been pretty much everywhere, and illustrated by Diana Knock. And as you can see, we are a few thousand away from goal, and you should go on and back it.
Hey, introduce yourself.
And then my name is Svei R. Monster. I'm the editor and coordinator of the Beyond Anthology, which is an upcoming queer-focused sci-fi / fantasy comic anthology that we're getting the final comics in now. It will be kickstarting to fund costs in early 2015, and that is my first major anthology. I've run a bunch of zines and stuff in the past in my youth when I was very young, but this is my first major comic anthology project. And I also do the comic F-Skin.
Hooray!
Hooray for us!
And I was just saying hooray, we're all introduced. But if anyone has any questions during our panel, they should tweet at me, which is @Kellhound on Twitter, and Kellhound has 2 L's. It's just Hellhound with a K. And so we'll start with Spike, because she is the most successful anthologies on this panel with her 6-figure Kickstarters and keeping that there. Tell us about how you got to where you are.
Okay, no problem. Well, and by the way, I'm just going to be sitting here and, drawing while I talk. Okay, well, I began my work in anthologies in general because Smut Peddler was originally a mini-comic that came out very appropriately in the noughties, or the zeros, or whatever you want to call them. It was published by Saucy Goose Press, and I believe there were 3 or 4 issues. And when I say a mini, in case you don't know, take an 8.5 11 sheet of paper, fold it in half along the long edge, and that is a mini-comic. That's that size. And there were several of those put out by Saucy Goose. And it did not have a woman-centric vibe to it then. It had a very indie vibe to it. And the idea was, hey, your favorite indie cartoonist, the one drawing all those cool, critically acclaimed, independent, and alternative comics? We got him to draw porn. And that was the original Smut Peddler vibe. And I really liked that. It was just sort of porn from people you very rarely got to see porn from. And Carlos B. McNeil was in it, Layla Lawler was in it, a lot of really cool people, Sean Vieri.
I was in it.
Huh?
I was in it.
You were in it, so I was saying a lot of cool indie people were in it. And after a while, the book went on hiatus, and that began my long campaign of harassment against the publisher, where every time I would see a high-profile participant or the publisher themselves at an event, I'd say, hey, when are you going to do another Smut Peddler? I love Smut Peddler. When are you going to do another one? Hey. Years of this. And then eventually, they told me, you know what, if you want it to come back so bad, you do it. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, we'll help. We'll, walk you through the editorial process and finding out who is willing to draw porno. And I went, wow, that's great. So what I did is I went home, sat down with my husband, and we literally just made a list of people we would like to see draw porn. And we emailed them, and it was like they were waiting their whole fucking lives for that email. It's like, hey, we're putting together a book. What porn would you like? Would I? You know, they immediately said yes. And back then I had no cachet, as it were. Like, there was no reason anyone should trust me that they would get paid in this project. So everyone was paid up front. And as a result, my bank account was devastated, in a word. It was down to a couple $100 when I launched the first Smut Peddler Kickstarter. Its goal was $20,000, and I, you know, in the dark of night when I was alone in my office, allowed myself to dream it would make it to $40,000. And it eventually closed out at $83,000, which was huge and amazing and incredible and literally life-changing. Ever since then, I've been a big fan of coordinating anthologies. I have my own theories about what makes a good anthology. I have basically form letters now that I have set up and reminders on my calendar to do this on this date, do that on that date. I've mastered the fine art of friendly harassment when people are late. It's been a really rewarding experience, and I am putting a lot of stuff out into the world that, you know, I think the world suffers from not having. And it's really gratifying to see how popular some of this stuff is.
So, the way I got into doing and organizing the anthology is actually Cautionary Fables and Fairy Tales, the one that I've kickstarted and is the most well-known out of what I've done, was not the first anthology I put together. The first one I put together was a group of friends and I in college wanted to all have sort of a collection of our own work because we were all going to table at a convention together. And so the idea is we'd each do an 8-page story in a book, and that would be like the collective the reason we would be tabling together because we were all kind of mismatched people. And I ended up in charge because I was the only one mean enough to kick someone out of the book when they kept dragging their feet. And it was like, we either need to kick this guy out or he needs to give us pages by tomorrow because otherwise we won't have the book printed for this con.
Mm.
And it was a weird situation because his pages were done. He just wanted to fiddle with them more and make really tiny changes. And so he was just refusing to give me his finished pages.
No.
And I was the only one willing to be like, well, if I don't have them by noon tomorrow, then you're not in the book.
Yeah.
There, done. And then I drew a fairy tale, and I ended up talking to a few friends who expressed interest in drawing fairy tales of their own or having an excuse to draw a fairy tale, and so that was the first Cautionary Fables and Fairy Tales. With that kind of tiny little bit of an idea, I thought, well, how can we make our fairy tales stand out more than anyone else, rather than it just being a bunch of cartoonists doing fairy tales willy-nilly? And so I told everyone who expressed interest in participating that they should pick a European fairy tale, because then if it's successful we can move forward and then do like African fairy tales and Asian fairy tales. And I had some people drop out.
You always
which always happens.
Always.
And learned a lot from putting together that first European fairy tale book.
Mm.
And Svei, how'd you get to Beyond?
I got to Beyond because I made a tweet in the spur of the moment where, because I am a queer comics person and I get annoyed by the lack of representation and visibility in all media in every shape, and I was thinking, I'm a comics person and I really want an excuse to do more. I hadn't started F-Skin yet, so I was kind of just like floating a little bit aimlessly, and I wanted an excuse to draw a sci-fi fantasy comic, so I made a tweet that was just like, I want to do this, somebody should do this so I can be a part of it. And at the time, a friend of mine, Rachel Edidin, she stepped in and said, yeah, let's just do it. And so she has experience coordinating people together. She worked for Dark Horse at the time, and so she said we can just get people together. We can talk to some people, and then we can have an open call for submissions. And she knew how to run it, and so I said okay, because I had no clue other than I can make tweets a lot. And so we did that. I was in Portland for Rose City Comic Con, perhaps, because Stumptown was done by that time. And so we met and we made the outline of what we wanted for Beyond, and we put up a call for submissions, and we were slammed by the number of people who ended up pitching to us. I think I had anticipated maybe 30 people would ask to be or would prepare pitches for the comic anthology, and I think by the end we had 250 or 300 or something like that, which was intense. And so now we're in the stage of, we narrowed it down to, I think we have 15 creative teams, so about 30 people. Some of them we invited, Blue Delaquanti, Fiona Staples, Dylan Edwards, a bunch of really incredible queer comic people. We got them in advance, and then we brought on some other people who I had never even heard of their work, so when their pitches came into the inbox, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And we got a really swell lineup together, and now we're in the final stages of, Rachel has moved on to other projects, so now I'm working on it with Tanika Stotts, who is incredible at coordinating and arranging and kicking my ass and making me do things so that the project moves forward. And it's really, anthologies are pretty, I don't know if either of you know this, but anthologies are time-consuming and a lot of hard work.
Oh, yeah.
I've always suspected.
I will say I made myself slightly less work for myself than you two did, because you guys accept submissions, whereas my anthology is invite only.
Yeah, I have to admit, part of my whole methodology when it comes to anthologies, accepting submissions is an important part of it for me for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm slightly full of shit when I say that, because Smut Peddler Presents My Monster Boyfriend will be my first invite-only anthology in 2015. But for the most part, my anthologies have been composed of two segments: the "Let me invite these people" segment, and I call it the cattle call segment, just the open call. Hey everyone, here's my anthology project. You got an idea? Cool. Here's a form. Submit it. And that has turned me on to so many cool artists and cartoonists that I otherwise would have no idea about if I didn't do that.
Same.
And it, in a way, this sounds really mercenary, and I don't mean it to sound this way, but when you submit to an anthology, in a lot of ways it's like a really informal audition. Because this anthology is just one thing I do. I'm going to be doing other things in the future, where maybe I'm looking to pay someone a page rate to draw a 20 or 30 page comic, or a 120 or 130 page comic. And if you submit to my anthology and you don't need a lot of hand-holding, you finish your work on time, it needs very minor edits, when I give you a template to draw on, you draw on that template. When I tell you where to send the finished art, that's where it goes. Those are big, big points you're scoring. And sometimes in my projects you will see people who show up over and over again. That is pretty much my way of saying, I love the way this person works. I don't just love their art, I love how professional they are. And I've met people through the open submission process who are like that. And god damn it, that's my phone. But
wow,
yeah.
Professionalism 101.
I'll be right back.
I'm going to talk about the reason why I do invite only is because I don't have time to go through 300 submissions. And since it's just me and I don't really have anyone helping me out with stuff, it being invite only and then also having a super duper I give people 2 years to complete their very short story. And
Wow.
that 2-year marker is also because that's how much time I have to spare to edit someone's thing on a monthly basis. Like, I need that 2 years to get everything together, not just the artists need that to draw.
Yeah, there are pluses and minuses for invite only versus accepting submissions, definitely. Like my monster boyfriend, I can tell already it's going to be a much smaller hassle. Because when you have submissions, frankly, one of the things that I always do whenever I accept submissions is there are kind of 3 levels. You're going to get one of 3 replies when you submit a story to one of my projects. One's going to be a thank you but no. One's going to be a congratulations you're in. And then there are the unsung heroes of the anthology, if you ask me. The people who don't get a yes but don't get a no.
Yeah.
The people I call them the pinch hitters. They get an email that says, I love your story, but I have a hard limit on the page count for my books. I'd include you, but this is just the way the cards fell. I want you to sit here and wait on me. And I will always have someone who can't make it or drops out. And I will email you when that happens. And you will just step in when they tell me finally that they cannot do this. I will come to you and your story will be a fill-in. And that's happened every single time I've run an anthology. If you are just in the initial planning stages of running an anthology, people, always line up at least a few pinch hitters. Always. Someone will drop out.
Absolutely. We've had that with Beyond, and it's been beyond incredible to have people waiting in the wings with really good stories that you can plug in to fill in those spaces, because otherwise it really hurts the project to lose people and not have anything prepared.
Exactly.
And we should maybe talk about what not to do when you are submitting to one of these projects.
No problem. Okay, follow the rules. If there's a submission page, read the entire page. Don't skim, read. Before you email anybody who is in charge of the anthology, a lot of the emails I do get are sensible, and they ask good questions I didn't think to answer, and they go in the FAQ. But a lot of them, I just know you didn't read, and the last thing you want to tell a person who is your prospective editor is, I don't read what you send me. That is definitely a strike against you. I've had people emailing me going, so when's the submission deadline? The submission deadline is literally the sentence right after the fill out this form to submit. And I'm like, you didn't go one sentence further, did you? And it's like, oh, the idea of working with you terrifies me. I've had
I know, Spike, that you had your horror anthology said no werewolves or vampires or zombies. And you got some people who were like, well, here's my zombie story. Yeah. I know you said no zombie stories, but mine is special.
Yeah, the one I had for Sleep of Reason, my horror anthology, the whole idea of it was going to be a more unique collection of horror stories. It wasn't going to be, forgive me, zombie fans, it wasn't going to be sort of the standard zombie apocalypse, werewolves, vampires, Hollywood set pieces. I was tired of that shit. I wasn't interested in that. I don't find that stuff scary for reasons I could spend a half hour on. I don't find it scary. I wanted genuinely scary stories, and I don't think that's achievable with creatures that everyone knows every facet of and everything about. So I wanted original work that, we don't know the rules to. We don't know how to defeat this monster or this threat, and the helplessness is an important part of the fear. And in the rules, I did leave some wiggle room. I said, unless you are absolutely convinced your zombie story is utterly unique and extraordinary, do not send it to me because it won't get you in. And of course, there were about 4 or 5 people who were utterly convinced their zombie story was unique and extraordinary, and they were dead fucking wrong. And I couldn't handle it. I was just like, next time, I'm not even going to leave any wiggle room because I can't deal with, everyone thinking they've got this perfect idea. But really, though, I've had much more specific, much more egregious examples of just plain not reading the rules. Sometimes it's people who are English as a second language, which I would have more sympathy for, except I've had people who are English as a second language who did read the rules and do it correctly. So I just can't stand it when they send me their submission via email. When I say multiple times in public, I say it on the page, do not email me your submissions. I can't stand it when they send me, the best way to describe it is requesting to be invited. People who don't want to go through the submissions process but want to be in the book start sending me emails going, well, are you familiar with my work? Link. Would this idea interest you? I just think I have a great idea for you and I'd love to be involved. Oh, you'd love to be involved? Awesome. Okay, well, the submission form is right over here. I've invited who I'm going to invite.
And also make sure the media, if you're submitting to a comic anthology, don't give us your novel manuscript or your poetry, or if you're a band, don't give us your mixtape.
Yeah, I am endlessly confused by people who look on websites and the website says clearly, we are the submission guidelines for a comic book anthology, and they submit something else.
We got a bunch of novels for Beyond, and we got 3 bands giving us their MySpace page.
I did not get any bands, sadly. So
well, you can shoot for that star.
I know.
I didn't get any of these because I don't take submissions. I just tell people that I want in it. But
you're missing out on a wonderful world, Kel.
Yeah, a whole new world, a new fantastic point of view. I have gotten people who have sent me finished stories that are like 3 or 4 years old that were previously published in other anthologies, and then in the second sentence of their email ask me about what they could expect to be paid. And it's kind of like, slow down. I'm not accepting this. I never said I was accepting this. And don't roll into my inbox, trying to get some money out of me just when, you barely just told me your name 2 minutes ago. There's just a lot of, I hate to say this, there's a lot of really weird, unprofessional behavior.
So
a lot could be alleviated by reading the submissions page.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, I don't know how much more I could say that. If there's a submissions page, read it.
Yeah.
So,
read it.
I'm going to talk about how I get people in my anthology since I'm going in the opposite direction. Like, you guys have to narrow down from 300-ish submissions each time.
Yeah, last round of Smut Peddler open submissions got me about 370. My current round of New World submissions got me 349.
And so what I kind of go the opposite route, where I made a list of 100 artists that I wanted to see in my book. And then I sent them all kind of the exact same email. And then with all the informations about what they would expect to be paid, what the specs are, what the anthology is looking for, and then ask them, are you interested? Just respond to this email. And I also include that basically I'm going to email them once a month for 4 more months. And that's, if they don't respond to by the 4th one, then I am just going to assume that their answer is no and move on. And so then I ended up with 50 people that said they were interested, and then the first deadline was picking a story, and 20 of those people didn't have their shit together enough to submit a story. And so it's kind of with each progress report sort of deal, the anthology is getting whittled down slightly more and more.
Yeah, I try to keep the emails that I send to people in the anthologies very brief. I use a lot of bullet point lists because my experience has taught me people don't really read them. And I've been trying to sort of distill things I have to say into the most polite yet terse version of itself I can. And I just go, hey everyone, it's this month. this month you should be doing this. Make sure to turn them in here. Let me know if you have any questions. This is very important. If you can't do it, I need to know now. Okay, thank you. It's going to be great. Bye. Because anything more, people won't read. That's kind of been a recurring theme in my life for the past several years. People don't read Kickstarter updates. People don't read the emails I send them organizing the anthologies. People don't read anything. So I just have to make things as short as possible. I use a lot of bolding and italics to draw their eyes.
Awesome.
I had a friend compliment me on having the briefest Kickstarter updates, the most briefest and to the point Kickstarter
and if
updates.
possible, a lot of pictures, because pictures instantly parsable. You automatically know what's going on. You just look at the picture and, okay, that's what this update's about.
But no, like, because I got this compliment after my last Kickstarter for Cautionary Fables and Fairy Tales, the Africa volume. I made an update that was 2 sentences. Books are at the printer. They're on their way to me and should get here at such and such date. And that was it. That was the whole update. So everyone knew what was going on, and people kind of didn't have an excuse to not read that because it was only like 2 sentences.
I'll not read it. Also, yeah, but back to anthologies, just in general. Like I said, people will drop out, have your pinch hitters, and something that I do, but I understand that my capability to do this, just like Space's capability to do something similar, is very privileged. And if you are, say, 19 years old and going to SCAD and you kind of want to get your first anthology together, this is something you won't be able to do. We have what I refer to as tent poles, where you go into the circus tent and there is a pole that is holding up the entire tent. It allows everyone else to participate in what's going on. The tent poles are the names, for lack of a better term. The people you know have audiences, and you know there are people in the world where they will hear that person's name and go, oh, I'm in, and without really giving a crap about anyone else in the anthology. And I always try to have at least a few tent poles. There will always be people in my anthologies that have submissions that no one has ever fucking heard of. Always. I like that about cattle call submissions. But tent poles are what assure my anthology projects get funded.
I will say, though,
that may sound really mercenary and that may sound really capitalist, but at the end of the fucking day, this book needs to exist. And that is something you need to consider.
I will say that one of the sort of things that I learned about quote-unquote tent poles is I have 2 deadlines. There's the deadline I tell the artists and the real deadline. And both of them are before the Kickstarter goes up. And if someone is almost done but isn't quite done when the Kickstarter goes up, they're not. I basically tell them, you will not be advertised as in the book until you send me finished pages. Because I did have in the first fairy tale book one person who, when I asked who do you want to sign your book, like more than half of the people wanted this one person to sign their book, and they weren't done yet. And they were like, I'm thinking maybe I should just, like, call it quits and not even bother because I think I'm holding the whole book up. And I was like, I can't not let you be in the book.
Yeah.
Because I just got, like, 60 people that want your signature on a book plate, and if you aren't in the book, I might end up having to refund, like, a third of the Kickstarter money. So, basically, whenever I do an anthology Kickstarter now, I'm going to have, these are the people that are finished, and they're mentioned on the Kickstarter page. No one else. Other people could maybe still, like, get in before the Kickstarter's over, but, Yeah, if you aren't done by the time the Kickstarter launches, then your name isn't on the Kickstarter until you finish. So I did during the Africa fairy tale book, like halfway through the Kickstarter goes, exciting news, so-and-so's now in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get where that's coming from, and
That's a really good idea, actually.
yeah, I can totally understand where that's coming from too. But it's like every single time, that's probably my weakest point when it comes to running anthologies, where I get stuff late, not crazy late, but the Kickstarter launches tomorrow, and maybe 3 or 4 people aren't done. Their names are still going to be on the web page. That has served me, honestly, it's served me pretty well for the last few projects because the peer pressure starts, and again, this is me going to be sounding very mercenary, but they get to see the Kickstarter in action, and they get to see the Kickstarter ticking up, and prominently displayed on that page is how much more money they're going to get when they're done. And I make it clear that payment is in full upon completion. They don't get half now, half later. They get it when it's done. And I do think that has lit a fire under a few asses in the past. It's like you could sort of fuck around for a few weeks, or you could get a check for $3,000. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, you should send them to Kelhound on Twitter.
Yeah. We haven't gotten any questions so far.
Yeah, but if you have any, it's KELLHOUND, like Hellhound with a K. Just make sure.
And,
Is there anything you forgot to cover?
I think what I didn't realize when I started Beyond, because I got into Beyond with literally no anthology experience, is that they take a really long time.
They do.
Like, it sounds so... I was very naive, where I thought, oh, I'll just, like, we'll get some friends together and we'll make a comic book sort of thing. But it's a massive... Not some... Like, getting the art together is a big amount of time and takes effort and blah, blah, blah. But coordinating all of the artists and keeping track of everyone and sending out timely emails and updates and stuff like that, it's a huge time responsibility. Running an anthology it's a big deal. Like, I wasn't expecting that. And I've got it now, and if you can have someone, like, for example, I've got Tanika helping me out. Pretty much we meet every week to have an update to keep things rolling. That's the best way to do it. Otherwise, it just snowballs, and then it would get absolutely out of control.
Yeah. And there's always a danger with large projects with lots of warm bodies just dying on the vine. And if you're going to be running an anthology, it's got to be up to you to keep things rolling, to keep things, like, advancing towards a point. Because work will expand to fill the time allotted, and you need to make it clear what time is allotted to what.
Yeah.
I send emails that go, hey guys, it's date, etc. That means, I should be having your pencils right now. I have pencils from some of you, but not from most of you. Remember, you have to send them here. If I don't hear back from you guys in a week, I'll be sending out individual emails. Okay, thanks, this is going to be great, bye. And that works. Most people have especially cartoonists, they have very active professional lives, and if they're independent cartoonists, they probably have 15 irons in the fire, and they don't mean to forget, and they don't mean to be late, but they are, because they have 1,000 things going on at once, because that's kind of how it is when you work for yourself. And they just need that extra thought.
Of the scripts that follow the rules, what typically pushes a script into the book or keeps it out? And I would assume that would be, like, depending on your personal interests, like...
That's where the power of the editor comes in, really. If I don't like it, it's very nebulous about, what strikes a chord with me and what doesn't. I can tell you for sure what I don't like. I don't like cliches. I don't like manic pixie dream girls. I don't like brooding white men with stubble who are saving the world. I don't like work that wears its inspiration on its sleeve. Like, if I read your story concept and I would look up at you and look you in the eye and go, you really like Avatar: The Last Airbender, don't you? Your stuff's not getting in. It's all about originality to me, but also about technical proficiency in the art. it kind of needs to be the whole package. You have to have a good idea. You have to have art that's easy to look at. I'm not saying you need to be, absolutely perfect on point in every aspect of your art, but it has to be pleasant to the eye, and you need to have a beginning, middle, and end. A lot of people who talk about their comic idea, seriously, watch for this. This is totally true. People who talk about the comic they're going to do, when you really listen to the, air quotes here, plot they've come up with, they have the first 10 pages. That's it. Yeah, my story is about a girl, and she's on her way home from school, and she falls into a pond, and it turns out the pond is a gateway to another dimension, and she meets up with all these cool people, and they have all these adventures. Cool, you've got the first 10 pages. Then what?
Yeah.
And that's not going to make it in. That's why I always demand a beginning, middle, end, because that weeds out a lot of people who are going to submit first 10 pages proposals to me. I don't have time to help you figure out an ending for your story. You need to have your ending when you show up.
What about you, Svay?
I remember for Beyond, there was, we narrowed it down to, I think we ended up accepting 10 out of the 250, 300 that we got. But when we had narrowed it down to the, I don't know, maybe top 40 or 50, what happened is that when we had to get really brutal because it's a sci-fi fantasy anthology. The balance was absolutely in favor of, I remember Rachel and I calling it the sad space lesbians. So there was so many, and it got to be really hard because there would be so many really good sci-fi pitches, but if we'd accepted all of the sci-fi pitches that we really, really liked, then it would have actually just been a sci-fi anthology as opposed to a sci-fi fantasy anthology. So we really had to get viciously brutal when it came to the sci-fi stories in order just to make a balanced anthology. And we also we had to get kind of tough about I don't know, meet cute stories that were just a couple that meets and falls in love, and P.S. they live in space, and that sort of stuff. Or P.S. they're dragons. We had to get kind of killer about those.
So clearly your next anthology should be Space Lesbians, the book.
Sad lesbians in
Take
space.
all those rejected space lesbian pitches and just put them all in one book.
I was like, why are you making all of these sad people in space being sad about stuff? Like, come on.
They're in space. They should be happy.
Really quick. When I put up my anthology pages, my anthology submission pages, there's usually a section entitled works that we are inspired by, or stuff that sort of is going to set the tone for what we're going to do, and we link to a bunch of media that is sort of has the same vibe as we're going to be shooting for with the book.
We also had to absolutely avoid.
Yeah, don't ignore that section. When I link to stuff for Sleep of Reason, I link to a lot of horror comics I really like Shintaro Kago stuff, and some of the submissions we got were so wildly off tone. I would go into the nearest betting parlor and put down $1,000 that they didn't click one of those links. It's those links exist for a reason. This is what we're shooting for. Don't give me anything that's wacky funster shit. It's a horror anthology.
But so, I know that since it's a fairy tale anthology, the invite I say basically says pick a fairy tale from this continent. And this is the continent we're working for. If there's some stuff that's you are confused as what would count as part of this continent, I had a few people ask if Egypt myths count in the African fairy tale and folk tale book. And I was like, well, Egypt's in Africa, but if it turns into the Egyptian myth anthology, I'm going to tell some of you to go home and pick a different story. And so I try to keep in mind the regions of the whole continent to be more balanced, so it's not all just one story. So actually I'm in the middle of organizing the Asian fairy tale anthology, and after the first 5 people picked their stories, I then sent a follow-up email that's hey everyone, there's more to Asia than China and Japan. I was like, India's a nice place. So it's Mongolia and Thailand, and so then like now the people who came like later, like they're picking like there's a story from Turkey and there's a story from Pakistan, and so it's getting more balanced overall. But that is, since it's an invite thing, it's basically I'm just telling them pick a different fairy tale to base your story on. I have also, since it's supposed to be 8 and up, I did have to tell a few people this fairy tale's kind of scary and there's sex in it, so I need to know how you're going to make this appropriate for an 8-year-old.
Mm. Yeah, because it is kind of important that, like, I understand fairy tales weren't originally for little kids the same way Looney Tunes weren't originally exclusively for children, but you have to kind of understand the context which they'll be viewed when they're on, for example, a con table, and poor bored 10-year-olds being dragged behind mom and dad, and they're looking for anything kid-friendly they can give this kid. And you don't want them coming to your table the next day to be like, okay, I bought this for my child because it said fairy tale on the cover, and there was a wiener on page 5.
Yeah, and I also, so far, I had one person in the European fairy tale book where I was like, this drawing is too much nudity, so you need to put some strategically placed objects there. And then there was another story in the African fairy tale one where, so I have a co-editor, which is Kate Ashwin, who does the webcomic Wendershins, and she also handles distribution in everywhere that's not North America. We had a conversation that was basically, here's a story where there's boobs in it, but it's accurate to the way this tribe dresses, so what do we want to do about this? Mm-hmm. And we ended up deciding that like we're just going to put like a little note that says that while the stories are child appropriate, it does contain what we refer to as National Geographic nudity. Mm-hmm. So
fair enough.
If that is a thing you are opposed to, then maybe pick something else for your kid.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've had people come up to my table, my table with Smut Peddler, Sleep of Reason on it, my table. And they're like, do you have anything that's child appropriate? Just instantly, I'm mildly envious of Cal, and I'm like, no, pretty much everything here has like stuff flopping out all over.
You can just say, here's a stuffed chicken.
Yeah, here's the stuffed chicken. The kids like the stuffed chicken. That's literally the only thing they can buy off my table. Everything.
So we have 2 more questions that kind of go together. Okay. One person is saying, for invited scripts, how do people respond to script feedback and editing? And as connected to that, when editing scripts, are there any reoccurring problems you consistently have to address? I'm going to say that most of the people, since I handpicked them, are professionals, and if I say, hey, change this one thing, they're usually like, okay, I understand, and then we'll send something revised. I haven't had anyone like throw a fit when I told them to fix something, but
yeah, you want fit throwing? Fit throwing, in my experience, has been the realm exclusively of maybe 1 or 2 people per submission cycle per anthology who don't make it in. The people who do make it in, by and large, are accepting of editorial interference to a point. I've had the occasional stubborn person who's all like, I'm not going to change this, and I'm going to explain to you why I'm not going to change this, but their reasons have been completely reasonable. And it's not some sort of weird tantrum, that they're throwing. It's just they're like, no, I want to keep this way because X, Y, Z.
Yeah, so since it's most professionals understand, this is, I think, where it's important to pay the people contributing.
Absolutely. When you pay someone, first of all, a project where money is involved is about a gajillion times more likely to actually happen. If there's a paycheck at the end of this road, that is a motivator. I have been in charge of projects before that simply died on the vine, like I said, because there was absolutely no money involved. And when editorial sort of interference came into play, it was almost like the mood was, you'll be grateful for what I give you because I'm doing it for free.
Yeah.
You know, don't tell me to change anything. This is already an act of charity I'm performing here. Yeah. But when you are paying people a page rate, and in my case, if there's a bonus that's being implied at the end of the day too, and you send back notes that go, I think panel 5 is really unclear, can you like pull the angle out a little? People are much more receptive to that.
Yeah, and I think that's also why it's important to, if you're running the anthology, to get people to check their work at the script stage, at the pencil stage, at the ink stage, so that it's not that you're getting a finished comic and going, whoa, what the hell? Yeah. You know, you get to like spot check that stuff early on.
There's been an instance where someone did not send me their pencils, did not send me their script, and maybe 2 weeks from deadline, they sent a completely finished comic, and I rejected it because it was just like, this is utterly inappropriate for the book. The tone is not appropriate. I don't like the dialogue. The art is fine, but I'm 100% not feeling this. And because it is literally a finished comic you sent me, we can't go back and fix it and have it be ready in time for the Kickstarter. So I gave them basically a severance package. You know, I gave them money for being involved because, you know, no hard feelings, but no, follow the rules. You can't do this.
I usually skip the script stage because since stuff is based off fairy tales, I usually just have to read the fairy tale to know what they're doing. And like and then I tell people like if they want to do something completely drastic that's not in the fairy tale, I ask them to just run that by me. So, like, I had, in the Africa fairy tale book, Faith Erin Hicks asked for permission before setting her fairy tale in space. And I was like, space is fine. It's beautiful. But, yeah, she did, like, run that by me before, like, going about it. Mm. Someone says, have you had any fortunate accidents, happy surprises with your submissions?
I have made a very good friend because she has submitted to my anthologies, and I did not know her before she did. And it's getting kind of awkward because she's been in Smut Peddler 2, and Sleep of Reason, and to be perfectly honest, I'm dreading reading her submission to New World because I really like everything she does, and it's going to look pretty weird if she's in all 4.
So is this Blue?
This is Blue Delaquanti, yes.
Blue Delaquanti is fantastic and wonderful. And
yeah, that's the problem. It's like she submits something, I'm like, God damn it. This is really good. Fuck.
Yeah.
And I know people are probably picking up the book and going, oh, I see how it is. Oh, they're friends. I see how it is. It's like, no, actually, we're friends now, but initially we weren't. It's just she kept submitting boss shit I couldn't say no to.
I would like to point out that I am friends with Spike, and I am not in all her anthologies.
Yes, that's important, yes. I can't help
I really liked with Beyond is that prior to the open call for submissions for Beyond, I didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. And so Beyond brought a whole bunch of new people into my world that I'm really glad that I found their work, and I don't think these days I can't imagine existing without being aware of their work. Uh-huh. And we're good friends now and everything, but prior to that, it's not like I was stacking the deck with all of my friends because I didn't know anybody. Yeah. So the whole Beyond thing was an incredibly fortuitous, happy accident in that I basically discovered the queer comics community because of it. Mm. So that was pretty nice.
With cautionary fables and fairy tales, I'm not gonna lie, I totally use it as an excuse to talk to artists I really like. Mm. Yeah. It gives me something to say when I go up to their table at a convention.
And I do have those shoot for the star moments where maybe 2 or 3 times per anthology, and sometimes I'll do this like live on Skype when we're all just sort of sitting there talking, and I'll just be like, no, you know what? I'm going to email my favorite cartoonist and see if he'll be down. I'm just going to sit.
This is a question specifically for Svay.
Oh no.
Faye, F-skin is great! Exclamation point.
Thank
With
you.
Beyond, I suppose you saw lots of queer characters. Any tips for designing queer characters?
Oh, that's a conversation for another panel, I think.
Yeah.
That's something that I could and do and would talk about for a really long time. But
This person is 1TUDORE. If you want to talk to them on Twitter, Faye.
yeah, you can tweet me or email me or something, because that's something that I have a lot of opinions on, but if I started talking about it, I wouldn't stop talking about it. But diversity is your friend in every single sense of the word.
Word. Is that a dog behind you?
Yeah.
Oh.
She got excited. I'm sorry. Hang on, I'm going to take her out of the room. Sorry, I apologize.
No, hold her up to the camera.
No, she's really big.
Oh, she's a dog. But yeah, that kind of echoes, in my opinion, if I could just fucking horn in on the question that was just for you, that kind of echoes what I've seen where people have told me, and I try really hard not to like get annoyed by this, but people have told me that they want to put more people of color in their work, but they are quote-unquote afraid of getting it wrong. And I understand where they're coming from, especially in light of, you know, when I go on Tumblr and I literally see white people policing the depiction of black people by other white people. You know, I totally understand where that's coming from. I understand the kind of environment they're afraid to be subjected to, the kind of environment they're working in, what they are afraid of being subjected to. But if it helps any, I have gotten commentary about how I depict black people and how the black people I depict are not realistic.
My favorite story, Spike,
Yes.
is the person who said that you have never met a black person.
I have never met a black
person in your life, and it's super clear that you've never met a black person, and that you're just writing your black characters the way a white person thinks black people behave. And then someone responded with just a picture of you, and in one sentence that says, "Wow, look how dumb you are."
Yep. Yeah, it's like, here's the thing though. People are people. They're human beings. If you're gonna come up to me and be like, how do I write a black person? Write a person and make them black. And that sounds flippant, but it's not. Now, a person's ethnic identity, or, you know, if we're going to expand it, their sexual identity, their gender identity, all their political identity, all their fucking identities is going to have an impact on who that person is. It's going to affect the way they interact with other people. But, like, the feature that makes them not a white, straight, cis person is not going to be their character trait. That makes sense. Yeah. Like, don't write the black character with the intention of, okay, and here's the black one. It's like, no, they're fucking fully formed human beings. I am black, and that is a feature of who I am, and obviously that affects what I'm interested in and what I talk about and how I fucking do my hair and all that stuff, but it's not the central feature that which the rest of my life revolves around. I'm not Boxy from fucking Aqua Teen Hunger Force. You know?
We have a question specifically to Spike.
Yeah. Wait, before we go into the question, wait, hang on. One thing. If you're going to be writing, if queer people, people of color, different politics, blah, 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 if you're not from that group and you're writing for that group, be prepared that if you fuck it up, and someone tells you you fucked it up, be prepared for that. Yeah. Because the worst thing you could ever possibly do is to start telling someone else's story, have that person say, you're getting it wrong, and then go, I think I know better than you. You know?
Yeah, don't
if you go into it being prepared that you're going to fuck it up, then you can turn it into a learning experience rather than not addressing it and then being stuck only writing the white, straight, cis, hetero character, you know?
Yeah, you can be respectful, and you can do your research, and you can still get something wrong, and it won't be the end of the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question for Spike, which is, your dialogue is really natural, and when reading scripts, what separates okay dialogue from great stuff?
Okay dialogue and from great stuff. A lot of this is taste, so bear with me there. But I like dialogue that doesn't necessarily have the rules of grammar in mind, because when people speak, they're not minding their grammatical structure. Natural dialogue is not grammatically correct. Natural dialogue is very, in my opinion, it's very sort of stilted. There's not necessarily stuttering, but there is a lot of repetition. If you like Brian Michael Bendis, you'll notice he pretty much, takes that and fucking runs with it. People repeat themselves a lot. People who... I'm not a huge fan of, for example, foghorn, leghorn, southern accents. I'm not a huge fan of people who are English as a second language, and the only reason you know that is because every once in a while they'll say "zootadolls" or something like that. I'm not a huge fan of expositional dump trucks, people who seem to exist just to advance the plot by explaining things to everyone. And my biggest pet peeve in so-so dialogue, and I'd say this kind of actually tips over into bad dialogue, is when people are on the phone and you cannot structure the phone call in such a way where you can communicate what it's about without having the person on the phone literally repeat everything that's being said to them. Like, we've all heard phone calls, or rather, we've overheard phone calls, which we were not a part of, and we know how they go. They go, yeah, 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 I know. Well, maybe. Fuck, I don't care. Okay, yeah, bye. That's a phone call. But when I see a bad phone call, and I'm just grinding my molars together a bit, where it's like, yes, that is exactly what he said when I told him what you told me. Well, obviously, we have to go and get the unobtainium before they get it. That is what I am saying. Okay, goodbye. I will meet you there. No, goodbye. Get out.
On the English as a second language thing, so my good buddy Joe, who drew from scratch and is credited as Jose, grew up in Mexico and is English as a second language. And I did not realize this until we had a conversation about the Ninja Turtles, because the English word he didn't know was the English word for nunchuck. So we're talking about the Ninja Turtles, and he says his favorite Ninja Turtle was always the one with, and then he stops, and he thinks, and then he, like, furrows his brow, like, annoyed with himself, and then he mimed nunchucks, and then said the Mexican word for nunchucks, which I forget at the moment. And someone who is English as a second language but has been speaking English for a very long time is not going to have trouble with English everyday stuff. It's when they get to a word that they almost never use, like nunchuck.
Nunchuck was English for nunchuck. Or you know.
And so that's just like a thing that sort of stuck with me for when you want to write a character that's English as a second language, but has lived in an English-speaking area for a long time.
Yeah.
There's a question for me that is, Kel, your Sorcery 101 world building is really rich. With different fables, you have to incorporate a lot of foreign culture and their background. Do you have any tips for explaining foreign fictional culture info in stories efficiently? And what I do is I just don't have the characters comment on it and don't really explain it, and people will get that that's sort of an everyday thing and not a big deal. And that's basically how I let world building, like, let you know what is part of the culture and what is abnormal or not.
You can infer a lot from a character's reaction to something. If someone just walks right by a living being of fire hawking, kebabs on the sidewalk, it's probably because that's not unusual to them.
And then do we have any tips for keeping a project going when you don't really have a budget?
Ooh, that's rough. That's a rough road.
Um,
If you are going to do an anthology or a multi-person project where there is zero budget and maybe sort of the promise of money at the end of the day, if that, I would really try and limit it to people in your immediate area, people that cannot avoid you or ignore your emails because you live down the street. People who are in your classes, people who are in your drawing clubs, people you talk to every day.
yeah, like going back to the anthology that I did in college, um, those were people that I saw literally every day. So we all knew each other. We all like hung out and drew in the same place. So we all knew how everyone else's sort of story was going and what like sort of track everyone was on.
Yeah.
And that's how we knew that one guy was done and was just refusing to give his high-res pages to.
Yeah. People who feel like if it will adversely affect them in a social way, to not turn in their work or to not, be an active part of the project, those are probably your best bets. And I know, like, there's a lot of temptation where these days, and I can't even say back when I was young, fucking DeviantArt and shit, but these days, like, you have friends on Tumblr and they're amazing artists and you'd love to work with them on something and you want to shoot them a note and be like, hey, what's up? I want to do an anthology and I'd really love it if you were in. I understand that temptation, but if you do not have a budget, if you cannot pay them, don't do it.
And then I had the European fairy tale book. Even though there was promise of pay down the road, those were all still people that I consider friends and had easy contact with. So, like, it wasn't hard to kind of poke them because I would be talking to them anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and be 100% honest up front. Like, if it's a not paying project, then from the very get-go, so say, I can't pay you, and be honest that maybe if there is the potential of money in the future, be honest about that, but also harken back to and repeat, but that's all based on Kickstarter or crowdfunding or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and like, so the deal with the one I did in college, it was literally, the agreement was, well, we're sharing this table together at a convention. It would be nice to have a thing that was all of us, so that way if anyone is like, what brought you folks together, we could point them to that book. And our sort of payment for the book is that everyone got 10 copies of the book that we were responsible to sell to people.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, keep it local. That's our advice for no budget projects. Keep it small, keep it local.
Yeah.
And then we have a question that's, when you consider newer or unknown artists for anthologies, what do you look for to judge and decide? And personally, I know this is targeted at you guys because you guys get unsolicited submissions, but I do have unknown artists in my fairy tale books. They're just people that I found and like the work of. And so yeah, I usually find people that I enjoy their artwork and think that they would be a good fit for the anthology as a whole, and thought that, it would be nice if I could be their sort of first paying gig.
Yeah, in my case, and I'm going to actually specifically talk about Smut Peddler, which is a special case in myriad ways for me, but Smut Peddler has reached a level now where there are people who are less interested in making woman-centric smut than they are in a payday and the reflected glamour of being involved in Smut Peddler. So it attracts a different echelon of people. And that's something Sleep of Reason and New World, as far as I've been able to tell, have yet to have to deal with. What attracts me to someone who I may have otherwise not at all heard of is, are they doing comics on their own without any prompt from me? Would this be their first rodeo? That's a big That's a big X in their, against them. If they don't have if I go to your Tumblr and there are no comics on it, that's when I start pulling back and pulling away. It's even better if they're doing porno comics on their own time. That's a big, big plus. I like to see that because it means this is a thing you are into anyway. You didn't just hear it made how much last time? Ah, chin rub. You know, it's like you're not that person. If you are working on your own Steam in comics, I have a term. If you are team comics, if you saw my sort of notes on the submissions for things like Smut Peddler, Sleep of Reason, New World, when I go through the spreadsheet and I'm looking at everyone's samples, sometimes my notes will be all like, not Team Comics, not Team Comics. This person is not Team Comics, which means they don't read comics, they don't draw comics, they don't talk about comics, they don't seem to have any opinion on comics, but they sure would like me to give them $1,000. And that's kind of like, that's a big no. That's a big no. If I haven't heard of you, and you don't have any interest in comics outside my comic project, that's bad. If I've never heard of you, and I go to your Tumblr, and your Tumblr is full of art, and your Tumblr is full of comics, and you have a link to your Gumroad where you sell little pay-what-you-want PDFs of a comic you did last year and a comic you did 6 months ago, cool. I like to see that, because that tells me exactly what I can expect from you.
How about you, Svay? What do you look for?
I know I use this term to joke a lot, but with Beyond especially, because sci-fi fantasy is such a huge, all-encompassing term, I was definitely looking for people whose quote-unquote brand aesthetic was in line with the things that I'm already keenly interested in. So you'll see when you see Beyond, there's a lot of stuff that you're like, ah, yeah, that's very like typical Svay brand. Or I was like, ah, there's like a fantasy race that's ocean oriented. I'm instantly on board. And I mean, one of the things that's really great about running your own anthology and being at the head of such a project is that you can you can wear your biases on the sleeve because it's your friggin' book.
Yep.
So if, it comes down to the story, the really well-crafted pitch that's about, the crystal warriors from the Seal Kingdom, and then,
I agree with that.
and then, like, your Star Wars knockoff, I'm definitely going to be like,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go with the Seals. I mean...
But let's be fair. You do really like Star Wars, so if they somehow combine those two, it would be an instant in.
No, actually, that's not so much true, because with Beyond, we had some very, like, strict things that were like, we don't want the story that's, what if Luke Skywalker and Han Solo were in love?
Yeah.
And what if, there were other things that were like, don't give us the story that's, like, the only queer person from planet straight cis hetero. And so... make sure, this is what Spike was talking about, make sure you read the guidelines, because if there's something that says, don't give us the one trans person from planet cis, maybe it's a good idea to save that for, another anthology.
Yeah.
The time or the place.
Basically, you need to have a pre-existing interest in comics in general with me, and it helps. I'm not even saying that, without this you're fucking toast. I'm not saying that, but if I go to your blog and you are already doing things that are remotely related to what I'm trying to do, and it doesn't really matter if I haven't heard of you or not. I've published tons of people I've never heard of.
I will say, I thought that maybe I was leaning a bit too much toward people that were already really well known in the Asian fairy tale book. So I actually emailed one of my former professors at SCAD and said, hey, are there any kids in your class that are reliable, good at black and white, and can you send me like a link to their stuff and like their contact email, basically see if any of them are interested. And I ended up picking 2 out of like the 10 people he sent me links to.
Yeah. Also, just no one asked this question, but I feel the need to mention this. Professionalism is very important, even when you get rejected. Even if you get a rejection letter, there are a couple things to keep in mind. Chances are, who sent you that rejection letter has sent out 300 just like it just now. they do not have the time to give you a personalized reason why you specifically did not make it in.
Yeah.
And the proper reaction to a rejection letter is not, how fucking dare you? The proper reaction to a rejection letter is, darn, oh well, maybe next time. Bye. Because just because you were rejected from Anthology A doesn't mean you won't get into Anthology B. Every single anthology I've run since the first Smut Peddler, I have turned down stories I've loved because I have a hard page count limit and I just can't include them. But if I reject you, no matter how much I love your story, if you decide to roll a fucking attitude on me, you're not getting in ever again. Because I don't have time for people who are high fucking maintenance.
And I mean, I think an important thing to keep in mind is that, especially in this indie, basically webcomics focused scene, is that if you give someone attitude on one day, it's a good chance that someone else will hear about the fact that you gave them attitude. So, yeah. I mean, it sucks to be rejected, and it sucks that you... And I can understand being frustrated and being upset about something, but that is definitely something to be professional and keep it to yourself, because the worst thing you can do is to roll attitude with someone, and then the next day I mention to Spike, you know, XYZ just came to me, and Spike says, XYZ gave me attitude. You might want to be careful.
Yeah.
Like,
that happens. That happens.
It's not so much that there's, like, a comic blacklist mafia or whatever.
No.
It's more just like, if I don't know you and I hear from Svei, like, this person was really difficult and didn't want to, like, change their scripts and then did everything, like, the specs were wrong but still wanted to hand in the wrong format and, like, refused to get, it took, like, 5 tries to get the right format. I might just be like, that sounds like a lot of work and effort to put into a person that I don't know and I'm not 100% sure of. So
most of the time it's never personal. It's just, as we keep saying, anthologies take so much time and so much effort that even minor inconveniences, when they become repeated over and over, then it just becomes like a, look, I don't have time for this, I'm not going to bother.
Yeah. And it's, again, it's just, it's not a personal attack. No rejection is a personal attack.
Oh my gosh, the most difficult day of my life was sending Beyond rejections.
It sucks because, I mean, like I said, we reject people. We love your stories, but we can't make the book bigger. It's physically impossible. We can't do it.
Yeah.
And we got more questions.
Okay.
How quickly do you read through submissions, and how do you manage that? And for me personally, Kel, how do you manage monthly check-ins? I'm going to, because my answer is real quick to my question, I'll go first. My monthly check-ins are literally just an email that's like, hey, poking you with a reminder about the Asian cautionary fables and fairy tales. I just wanted to know everyone's progress. Okay, bye.
Mm-hmm. And what was the second half? It was
The part for you guys was how quickly do you read through submissions and how do you manage reading through submissions?
All right, you want the unvarnished, cruel truth about how I read submissions? Here it goes. I go to the last column first, because the last column in my submission forms is the portfolio link. I click on that portfolio link, and if I don't like what I see, I stop reading there. I don't even get to your story. I don't get to your name. If I don't like the art, it's not going to happen no matter what. So that is the first column I look at. This is something I do now because, like I said, I'm getting 350 submissions. I can't read every single submission. So, and there have been times where I've read stories and I've really liked them. I click the portfolio link and I've had my heart broken because the art is not up to snuff. So if you pass the art test, if I go to your Blogspot, Tumblr, DA, whatever, and I like what I see, even if I don't necessarily see a comic page, that's when I move on to the story. And again, that's when a few more people, that's when the second charge of the Light Brigade goes on, when I read the story and I decide, do I like it or not? I don't know. Let's see. And I usually go back and forth between the art and the story then. Like, can I see this story being successfully depicted in this art? and that is when page count comes in. If it's kind of iffy, I'm not really sure if this will work out, I look at the page count, and if it's 20 pages long, that's not good. However, if you're kind of iffy and I'm not really sure, and it's like a 6-page story, I maybe sort of I use a stoplight system. I put yellow by your name as opposed to green or red. And this initial burst of no, 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 yes, maybe, no, yes, maybe, no, no, yes, yes, no, that maybe takes a Saturday. When I'm done there, all the reds are utterly removed from the spreadsheet, and I look at the greens and the yellows. Without looking at page counts again, I decide which stories I really like. And those kind of get shoved to the side. There's usually 4 or 5 that, like, right out of the gate, I know I really want in there. And then it's the matter of the last 4 or 5. And I usually am picking those from between 25 and 50 stories I really like. So it's brutal. There have been literal coin flips where I'm trying to decide who makes it in, because the stories are both really good, they're both the same length, and the art is, like, really awesome. And there's no fair way to decide who makes it in. So I have to flip a coin.
One thing I'd like to bring up that we haven't really gone over is how to make your anthology stand out.
Oh god, opinions. Fucking opinion triangling into the asshole statement. Oh my god.
I remember, Spike, when you were a bit disappointed that Sleep of Reason underperformed Smut Peddler.
And it'll make me sound like the biggest asshole. My $47,000 Kickstarter was so.
No, I'm not trying. And it was kind of like, I just remember, like, beforehand, before you put up the Kickstarter, you were trying to figure out, like, if you thought you could expect more money from Sleep of Reason than from Smut Peddler. And I remember telling you that Sleep of Reason probably not, because Smut Peddler doesn't have any competition, or at least when it first went up, it didn't have any competition. I'm seeing a few people pop up now as like the only like female-friendly focused porn that you could find in comics, and then like Beyond doesn't have a lot of competition because how many queer sci-fi fantasy anthologies are there?
Thick on the ground.
Huh?
Yeah, they're everywhere. It's like cicada season, you go out the door and 5 or 6 fall out of the trees into the back of your hoodie.
And so that was something that when I was first putting up Cautionary Fables and Fairy Tales together, it was, since Fairy Tales is well-trodden ground. You can Google fairy tale comics and find like a bazillion different volumes. And so the way I thought since I wanted Cautionary Fables and Fairy Tales to stand out, the region focus for each volume is how I decided to go about that. Because while it's easy to find comic adaptations of Little Red Riding Hood, if it's part of a series and one is African fairy tales and one is Asian fairy tales, and then the volume after that I know is going to be Pacific Island fairy tales, like that gives it more unique sort of mission statement than others. And I felt like Sleep of Reason had a harder to sum up in an elevator pitch mission statement.
I get that, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of that's actually something, I believe Sleep of Reason definitely had a theme, but I believe the theme was more about what it wasn't than what it is.
Yeah,
so
and that makes it harder to sell, I think.
Yeah, which is why the one I'm doing right now, New World, the theme is just culture clash. I mean, I could say it in 2 words. That's what the theme of New World is. It's uncontacted cultures meeting up together for the first time and how they deal with that. And honestly, like, I'm saying that, I went with that because, number one, it's something I'm super interested in, and I would love to see more depictions of that in sci-fi that don't kind of follow the white colonialism, kill them and take their shit model. But also because when I'm trying to explain this book to people, I want to be able to succinctly sum up the theme. And I think it is a mistake to publish an anthology where the theme is very broad. I think it's a mistake to publish an anthology where it's like, what is it? Oh, it's just fantasy stories. Okay. And? It's like, just like, let people know what they can expect, Yeah.
So, I feel like at least having in mind how you're planning to sell it to people is a good way to go. I'm not saying that you should change your anthology theme to make it sell better. Yeah. Just like be aware that the more focused it is, the easier it's going to be to tell people what it is.
Yeah, and I know it's like, oh, it's terribly gauche to sit there and talk about the back end when this book is out there and there are pallets in your basement and you're like, I have to get rid of these fucking books. I know that's not something like, indie comics likes to talk about, but, fuck y'all. I have a mortgage. I need to talk about what's going to happen when these books are made and the Kickstarter is fulfilled and I'm left with between 3,000 and 7,000 books that need to get the fuck out of my house. And that planning, the get the fuck out of my house planning, needs to start before the book even exists.
Yeah. So that's my roundabout way of saying I think New World will do better than Sleep of Reason.
I am curious. We shall see. I don't know. I think it's a bit early, but at the end of the day, though, I'm glad I made Sleep of Reason. I'd be glad I made New World because if I don't make them, no one's gonna.
Yeah. If just a reminder for people watching that if you have questions, you should tweet them to @Kelhound on Twitter.
Oh, I want to tell people a secret thing. Hold on.
What's your secret thing?
I'm gonna do this and let me go ahead and get this. I've mentioned this in the chat a few times. Oh, it's not going to be super secret, but
it's not going to be secret for much longer because you're about to publicly show it to the internet where it will be recorded for all eternity.
Yeah, that's okay though, because a little promo right out of the gate would be fine. It's pretty small though. Okay, this is the finished cover art for one of the books I'll be putting out in 2015.
Yeah, the hot demon guy.
Yeah, this is the cover for Smut Peddler Presents My Monster Boyfriend. So I just thought I'd show you guys that. And it's a wraparound cover, which is why there's this big long thing on the butt end of it here, because that's going to be the back cover. So anyway. And then it's gone. It was never here. Ooh. Okay. Any more questions, or can we wrap it up?
I think I haven't seen any more questions in a while. I would like you to know that most of the questions came from one guy.
Was it Komatsu?
No, it was the person that I tweeted at Svei who asked about how to design queer characters.
Oh, okay.
Thanks,
well, in that case, I think we can call it quits, right?
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for watching. I'm going to once again promote my Kickstarter, Sorcery 101. It's a big, giant 750-page omnibus of my webcomic that's been going on for 10 years.
Yeah. And I'm going to promote my Kickstarter. Have you ever wanted to go to Guam or Japan, possibly Australia or France, but you're broke as a joke and you think it's impossible? Chances are it's not. Poorcraft Wish You Were Here is a book about traveling inexpensively by Ryan Estrada, who is a globe-trotting cartoonist, which is kind of like saying jumbo shrimp. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But he has lived in Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Laos, Cambodia, Kenya, Tanzania, Costa Rica, Mexico, a lot of places, and he is a cartoonist. He does not make a lot of money, and he has managed to make it work. He has scripted the whole thing. And $5 gets you the full PDF because it's a book about being poor. It shouldn't cost that much. So if you back us on Kickstarter, we'd be very, very appreciative.
Oh,
and
Komatsu would like to say that he is offended because he already knows all our secrets from convention.
Hi, Komatsu, what's up?
Alright. Svei, do you have anything to promote?
I'm going to promote the Beyond Anthology, which is beyondanthology.com or beyondanthology.tumblr.com, where you can see the amazing anthology that we're making, that we're in the final stages of getting together right now, and we're getting the cover made, and we're going to be kickstarting it early next year.
I just noticed your sweet hockey clock.
Oh, cool.
Isn't it good? Isn't it? There's also the Canadian Olympic hockey team down there, and there's a picture of Wayne Gretzky on the wall and a map of Canada. I'm very Canadian right now.
Oh, Spay, I want you to know that hockey question that I asked you a little while back, that helped me get a writing gig. So thank you.
Okay, well, next time I'll do a panel about writing hockey comics references.
It was for reference people. I just sent Spay a message that was like, Spay, I need background dialogue, so just tell me why you hate the Bruins.
I've been calling my favorite team the Loser Babies recently.
Oh my god. Who's your favorite team?
The Canucks.
Baby.
My millionaire loser babies.
Alright, so we're going to wrap up. Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Yep.